Season 3 of Love Transform Evolve is brought to you by Dreams Financial. Alex and Steph have been my financial advisors for years, and that's no coincidence. They don't just see me as a client, but rather as a partner in building and protecting my wealth. Their personalized approach and innovative solutions have made financial planning a breeze. And I love the fact that they are in it with me, explaining everything as we go, and I always know where my money is going and why. And when it comes to the death of a loved one, Alex and Steph are experts at providing compassionate guidance, offering clarity and direction. For more information, you can visit their website at dreamsfinancial.ca.
Decisions, decisions, decisions. When I was actively caregiving, both for my mom and for my father, it felt like the pile of decisions, this mountain of decisions, was getting higher and higher. And you have so much information that's being thrown at you on a regular basis that it's difficult to process and difficult to understand which information is the right critical information to use to help you make a decision. Sometimes it's not even the big decisions that can weigh you down, but it's the little micro ones. Like, I remember after my mother had been hospitalized for the first time, we came back home and I did not want to leave her side. I was there for her. I had become her chauffeur, her chef, the medical administrator, right? Giving her all of her medicines. I was the coordinator between all of the different stakeholders. And so the thought of leaving her side became a big decision. Was she going to be able to be okay? Who could I bring in to make sure that they sat with her in case she panicked? Where was I would I be available at a moment's notice? How far should I go in case she needed me? I made the decision that it was very important for me to take at least 4 hours a week to go to a friend's house, have them cook me dinner, have a glass of wine, and be separate from that situation. But making that decision came with so much stress, so much guilt, and it wasn't very easy. Today, we speak with someone who helps us make sense of what's really going on in our brains when we do make decisions, and how we as humans and as caregivers can make ones that make us feel whole.
We live in a day and age where we have access to more data than ever. And you would think that with more data, we could make better decisions. But do we? For caregivers especially, our lives are filled with micro decisions, causing us to carry just as much of a mental load as a physical one. Some are seemingly insignificant, like deciding what time to leave the house to beat traffic on the way to an appointment, or moving prescriptions to a pharmacy closer to your house instead of your carees to make it easier on you. Others, however, like which home to place an aging parent in, or whether to even place them at all, can be monumental. Dr. Amalia Issa is a distinguished neuroscientist who has spent her career helping people make smarter decisions. She is celebrated for pioneering precision medicine decision-making and empowering individuals to navigate the complexities of making decisions in an era of AI and digital health. Dr. Issa received her PhD in neuroscience from McGill University, her MPH from the UCLA School of Public Health, and completed postdoctoral work at Harvard Medical School. I couldn't be more thrilled to have her here with us today to help us make sense of making better decisions. Dr. Issa, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Cynthia.
So, okay, I'm very interested in what you do, what you study, but I am going to really need you to kind of dumb it down for me if you could. So what is decision neuroscience and how does it relate to healthcare?
Thank you. That's a good question. So decision neuroscience examines the neural or brain mechanisms underlying decision-making processes. And so the idea is, the hope is that by understanding those mechanisms, we can develop strategies to improve healthcare decisions and thereby leading to better patient outcomes. That's kind of it in a nutshell. My particular focus or my work focuses on what I call precision medicine decision science. It's a field that, as you said, I pioneered to understand how individuals make health-related decisions, especially regarding personalized medical treatments. So as medical science becomes more and more personalized, we want to better understand how people interact with the various technologies like precision medicine, like AI, like various forms of digital health to be able to see how that shapes people's decision making and how their decision making is maybe altered because of the digital world we live in. So we explore how people evaluate options, how they weigh risks, how they make choices, often life-altering healthcare decisions, as you mentioned, how patients, caregivers, and also healthcare professionals interact with the different technologies and use tech to make decisions about various things going on in healthcare and for their own well-being. And we also study how technology nudges us sometimes toward choices. I think that's a very important point that sometimes we don't really think about because sometimes it does so without us even realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, listening to all of that, when I think about making decisions, a lot of the times there's data involved, but it's also emotional. I never really thought that there are actually like things that are happening within the brain that are influencing how we make those decisions. So are there like actual brain regions that help us in the decision-making process that dictate that?
Sure. So there are specific brain regions that are responsible for making decisions. It's a bit complicated, but I'll try to keep
Yes,
it
please.
I'll keep it simple. I'm just going to touch upon them in general terms. So I know you're an expert in project management. So and I'm a project management professional. So I think if you think of your brain as a boardroom of an organization. So let's use that as a metaphor. The prefrontal cortex would be the CEO. That's
Okay.
involved in logical reasoning and planning. It's essential for evaluating options and controlling impulses. The orbitofrontal cortex is important for assessing the value of rewards and negative outcomes, and influencing choices based on expected outcomes. So that would be the risk assessor, or risk management, if you will. It's calculating, is this worth it? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? Then you have the anterior cingulate cortex, which plays a role in monitoring outcomes and detecting errors, helping adjust our decisions based on past experiences. So this is the one that's kind of prompting you to say, hey, remember what happened last time when you did such and such? And if we continue along with the boardroom metaphor, this is the mediator, right? It's the overthinker. It also plays a role in resolving decision conflicts, right? Which actually we all go through multiple times a day, right? So if you think, should I exercise now or is it better? I'm feeling too tired. Maybe I'm just should watch a Netflix show. Those kind of
I had
decision
that this
conflicts.
morning.
Yeah, I think we all go through that. Um, yeah. And then you have the amygdala, which is which is really what people consider the seat of emotion. It processes emotions. And that can significantly impact decision making, as you were saying, Cynthia, especially under stress or uncertainty, which caregivers, of course, go through a lot of stress and uncertainty. So you can think of it, using our metaphor again, the amygdala is kind of the drama queen. Okay. And then deeper down into the brain, we have the striatum, which is essentially the reward tracker. It lights up when you get a dopamine hit, like if your boss gives you some praise, okay, or if you get anytime you get a social media like, for example, that lights up all the time. And I should also mention that there's what we call the social brain network, which is very involved in decision making as well. The social brain network is a fascinating system of interconnected brain regions that work together to help us navigate the complex world of human interactions. This is the network that enables us to understand and interpret social cues, recognize faces, empathize with others, make sense of intentions and behaviors of those around us. And it's really like having a superpower that helps you understand why your friend is upset, why your boss is being irritable, why that stranger on the bus seems friendly,
Right.
all of those things.
So, I mean, it's quite a packed boardroom.
Yeah.
I would imagine that when all of those players are showing up to the table, well rested, fit, ready to go, there's kind of like a synergy between all of them, right?
That's right.
But I can't help but think about how stressful caregiving is. And I'm wondering, how does stress impact the functioning of all of the people in that boardroom, and how does, just the overall impact of caregiving impact the ability to make sense of or make sensical decisions?
Right. That's a great question. So, caregiving is it can be quite decision heavy. Okay. And why is that? Well, imagine trying to solve a complex puzzle while you're feeling exhausted, emotionally drained, and constantly interrupted. And that's caregiving, right? You, as caregivers, often caregivers are juggling hundreds of small and big decisions daily, and often multiple times a day. Is mom safe at home alone today? Can I leave her for an hour just to go for a walk so I can de-stress or decompress for a bit? Or will I feel guilty because maybe if I go for a walk for a few minutes, she might fall or something could happen. Is this fever urgent? Did my grandfather take his meds? Should I call the doctor or wait and see? So caregivers often face high stress situations, emotional fatigue, mental fatigue, complex choices. And this environment can really alter or impair cognitive functions, which makes decision making more challenging.
Right. Do you have any recommendations for a caregiver to, first of all, acknowledge that they may be facing needing to make a big decision, and that maybe they need to give themselves a chance before making that critical decision, like acknowledge how possibly they're just not in a place to do that?
Yeah, so I think what's important is to recognize that fatigue is a real thing, both emotional, mental fatigue, but also decision fatigue, that when you have so many options and so many decisions that need to be made, that is affecting your decision making. And then there's some ways to lighten the load. One thing you can do is build decision-making routines, as well as use resources, whether they're low-tech or high-tech resources, use resources. So even what might seem like simple things, like using Uber Eats for meal delivery, or meal prep kits like HelloFresh, or creating decision routines like, if this happens, then I will do this. If grandma or grandpa need X, or I will do that. Yeah.
Can I just ask you a question about that? Just
Sure.
because as I sit here and I hear you say, like, if this, then that scenarios, there's a part of me that feels like there are a myriad of scenarios that I could do that with and for, right? And a part of me would think that I would be apprehensive to even go down that track, because I would feel like it's catastrophizing, if you would. How do you guide someone to doing those if then scenarios in a healthy light and prevent them from feeling kind of like fear?
So I think what we have to keep in mind is there's no such thing as a perfect decision maker. Only people. What we want to aim for is trying to become more effective, right? And so that means focusing on process over pressure. And so I think one of the things that I find simple but very helpful is recommending to people they use the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
Not every decision is critical. Okay. If you cook a nice meal and your loved one doesn't like it, or is not having a great day and they just don't eat it, that's not the end of the world. So to try to focus your energy on the 20% of choices that impact 80% of well-being. So often those are things that impact safety and medical care. Those are the two major things. And so those are where I would say the if-then scenarios matter. You also could try using what's called the future you test, right? So you could ask, will I be okay with this decision in a month or in a week? And it shifts the focus from short-term guilt to kind of long-term impact.
Oh, I love that.
And one of the things when I'm working with people or trying to help them out that I try to do is to try and we try to tease out, is the decision, what's clouding the decision? Is it fear, or is it something, and what is the fear? Is it Are you afraid of feeling guilty, or are you afraid of the potential side effects of this new medication? So what are the actual fears? And once we identify what's going on, it helps clarify the decision making. So you try to kind of create a process for decision making.
Right. And you sit with, it sounds to me like you will maybe sit with families, both patients and their kind of caregiver networks, to help them make these kinds of decisions,
Yeah,
right?
that's the ideal. Yeah, if people are willing to do that, that's the ideal.
Are they? Are they willing to do that?
It depends on the context. Yes, you do get people who are who find it helpful.
That's great. Can you give me a scenario? Because I would imagine, I think back to my own personal experience of sitting in the hospital room when my mother got her diagnosis of terminal cancer, and the doctor recommended to her, a certain protocol of treatment. And I'm sitting there and she's sitting there, and we're just kind of received this information, and no decision wanted to be made in the moment. Can you talk to me a little bit about, how somebody like you in your position would maybe come in and walk us through how we would make, an informed decision from that perspective?
So in a hospital setting, I've actually worked as a hospital ethicist, so the ethics consultant, and in that situation, either the family often asks for the hospital ethicist, or the care team, the physicians or nurses often ask for that, request a hospital ethics consult. And I would say I would actually recommend to anyone who's facing high stakes decision in a healthcare setting, in a hospital context, whether it's cancer or something, or some other disease that's quite serious, to try and request an ethics consult, not necessarily because there's an ethical decision to be made, but also because that person often is trained to help people through the process, to help guide them, help them navigate through and manage things. So in a situation like that, I would say you sit with and you find out what are people's concerns, what are their fears, what are they afraid of regretting? Because often people don't mention regret, right? But it's always sitting underneath the surface. We all have that, right? And sometimes it's as simple as, I regret we didn't, play tennis more because I was always too busy, or whatever. Or it could be, I regret that I'm going to make the wrong decision for my mom, my dad, my grandfather, whatever, whoever it is, whoever my loved one is, before. I'm not sure if it's what they want, if they're not able to speak for themselves, because sometimes you have situations where people don't speak themselves. But I think what's important is to walk through the process and kind of share what people's fears are, what they're afraid of, out on the table, but also allow them to ask questions about the specifics of the treatment, the specifics of the diagnosis, the specifics about the prognosis. Nobody actually ever fully knows the prognosis, or can fully tell you this person only has this much to live, or that's not, they give you kind of estimates based on population level information, but it's not the best type of information, and we don't want to anchor on that. So, and the other thing I think would be helpful is to have someone walk you through your cognitive biases, right? Like, we all have different ones. We all have cognitive biases we should be aware of. And once we're aware of them, we do a better job. We become better at recognizing them, and then the decision process becomes a little more effective as well.
What is that influence on our decision-making process?
So cognitive biases are basically mental shortcuts, right? Or sometimes you might hear the word heuristics. And there's different kinds, really. There's you can look on Wikipedia and see tons of biases that are possible. But all of us each of us, I would say, tend to gravitate towards certain ones, like we're prone to certain things. There are also, mental shortcuts for the most part are useful. It's until they lead us astray that they become a problem. So in terms of decision making in a digital environment, which is what we all live in now, I would say there's some that are particularly of concern, and those are the ones that we want to be more familiar with. So confirmation bias is one. For example, you might only click on articles that reinforce what you already believe, rather than getting a diverse perspective. And Google makes this worse because it gives us more of what we like, right? Another example is AI might recommend treatments that match your beliefs because it learns who you are or what you're like, rather than evidence, which we wouldn't necessarily want. There's also the availability heuristic or bias. That's believing the first search result is the best option, just because it's the easiest to find or because it pops up earlier in the search. And then we have what's called automation bias or AI authority bias. Those are some somewhat newer biases. And that's trusting a recommendation because it came from AI, from an app, over trusting things that apps tell you, or something that you see online, like ignoring a loved one's symptoms because the wellness tracker says, hey, this is all good. Even a smartwatch, it can make mistakes, right? There's also anchoring bias, and anchoring bias is sticking to the first search result, even if it might be WebMD's worst case scenario, and not necessarily what's going on with your loved one. So those are a few of the biases. There's certainly a lot more, but that gives you an idea of cognitive biases. And I think one of the things that can be helpful if you're like say an ethics consultant or someone who's a decision scientist helping people walking people through some tough decisions, is trying to figure out what their cognitive biases may be, because we all have them. And we all live with them every day.
I mean, hearing you talk about, yes, going to Google and social media and, these types of biases that create, perception is reality, right? And we're only as good as the information we have access to. But if that information is not necessarily credible or it's not applicable, it could really mess with our ability to process, understand, perceive a particular situation. How easy or hard is it, do you think, for somebody to shift or overcome their particular bias?
It's interesting. For most people, I'd say once they're really aware and understand what a bias is, they become, that recognition helps. That recognition helps with at least pausing and saying, "Oh, I got to be careful here," because I'm manifesting this bias. I'm anchoring on the first search result. So maybe I should start looking for other things. I should ask someone for help. So it's generally not as hard as people think it is. Now, you can certainly be, a bit stubborn in your personality and decide that you always do things a certain way and therefore you're going to continue down that road. But that's personality differences.
Right. So where technology might so we become aware of our biases, technology creates a little bit of this confusion and we're aware of it. Are there some technologies that can help us make better decisions and reinforce confidence in approaching a decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say there's at least three different areas. There's more, but I'm just going to focus on three where technologies can assist caregivers, and they include medication management apps, so reminders and tracking of medications, telehealth services, so remote consultations with healthcare professionals, and health monitoring devices, so wearables that track vital signs, alert to anomalies, or when someone is starting to go in decline. So wearables are things like Apple Watch's heart rate monitor, or the Oura Ring that some people use for sleep tracking. There's also AI voice assistants, like you can create custom Alexa or Siri routines for medication reminders. A caregiver actually once told me that she programmed Alexa to say, "Hey, Dad, it's time for your pills. Take them now, please." And guess what? He listened to Alexa a lot better than he ever listened to her. So,
Love that.
yeah.
That's great. Making AI work for us, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are also predictive apps, right? And they're available often on smartphones, but also on the web. There's so many. We have over 20,000 apps and wearables, so there's a lot that you can sift through. But for example, There's one called, just to give you one example, One Step. It's available on smartphones. It analyzes how you walk and move. It can predict if you or, say, an older person, the gait changes, your walking gait changes, and maybe you should consider getting evaluated. It can tell you if you are at increased risk for falling, based on your environment, and how your gait might have changed. It can suggest things to strengthen your muscles, and it can also connect you, if you choose, to chat with a physiotherapist or a doctor.
Oh, I love this. Is this available in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, you can get it on your iPhone or whatever smartphone you use. So check it out.
That's wonderful. I just think about, situations where people have aging parents and they don't necessarily need to be with their parent every single step of the way, but give them a little bit of an advance notice of, oh, this person may not be noticing that they're walking differently, but might be cause for preventing and getting ahead of issues, because this is the thing with healthcare too, right? Is we want to get ahead of anything as much more than kind of fixing, right?
Yeah, and there's apps and wearables that are for very specific types of. So there's general things like what I just mentioned. The One Step could be for more general,
Yeah.
or the smartwatch, the Apple Watch might be for more general vital signs and healthcare. There's some that are very specific. So there's, for example, there's one called Embrace 2, which is a type of smartwatch that can detect epileptic seizures.
Wow.
Yeah, so depending on what the patient's needs that the caregiver is caring for, it's a good idea to ask and find out what's available, because there's a lot that's available.
That's incredible. I'm going to just ask you this question. I know it's not necessarily in the line of what we're talking about, but we've got AI, and we know what the healthcare system, the Canadian healthcare system is, the demands on it. What do you think AI could do, if anything at all, to help us with wait times, let's say, in hospital rooms and in getting appointments?
That's a great question. It depends a great deal on whether the different provinces want to use AI. There's certainly capability for AI to help with wait times, but it depends on the provinces actually implementing that and using it in such a way that it becomes a valuable resource.
But it's possible.
Yes, physically possible. It's capable of helping.
Oh, well, let's hope that technology helps us advance that as well.
But that's more of a policy question than it is a tech question, really.
A tech question. Yeah. I think, truthfully, I think, tech is the way of the future. It's coming. It can be helpful. Like you said, there are areas that can trip us up and that we can become overwhelmed. So I would imagine, though, it's not going away. So we just have to figure out the best ways to help us move forward in our journeys.
So the way I like to think of whether certain apps or wearables or AI in particular, you have to think of it as a co-pilot rather than the driver. So AI, for example, can help assist caregivers and patients really in helping making better choices by analyzing patterns, so it can predict when a loved one might need extra care based on their daily routines, for example. It can summarize medical information. So if you've been given someone's, your loved one's medical chart, and it's like 50 pages of notes, the AI can help you. It can help summarize that. It can automate simple decisions. It's like auto scheduling doctor appointments, among other things. But that said, human intuition is always going to beat AI every time. Okay, particularly in a complex emotional decision. So, AI can tell you, hey, mom is waking up at night more often, but only a caregiver can figure out why. Is she in pain? Is she experiencing anxiety? So AI provides the data, but we as humans provide wisdom.
I love that. What a beautiful, I think that's a beautiful place to end this interview, to end our conversation. Trust in ourselves, trust in our humanity and our ability to bring that wisdom to the table. Dr. Amalia Issa is an award-winning neuroscientist, speaker, and consultant who specializes in educating people to make more informed decisions in the age of AI. You can find her on her website, amaliaissa.com. Dr. Issa, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to speak with you today, Cynthia.
If you like what you heard today, be sure to rate, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Cynthia Iorio. Until next time.